everyone, I'm Shruti. Welcome to my channel Stitch Meditations. On this channel, you're going to find a lot of information about stitch meditation, how to get started, what are the basics, what you need to know, and all those things. At the same time, I'm also going to share some tips and tricks that will help you make this a part of your everyday practice. So let's get started for today. Today, the topic that we are going to discuss is the top mistakes that I made when I started my practice as a stitch meditator. I did not start out as a stitch meditator, to be very honest. It was something that just evolved. So I started quilting in 2009 when I had taken a sabbatical from my career in architecture. And I just fell in love with it. And soon it became a huge part of my life. And in fact, for a few years, it was my life. I went from being an unknown quilter in a quaint little town in India to a brand ambassador to three leading brands in the sewing industry. I was also on the board of the Modern Quilt Guild. And at the same time, I was traveling all over the world teaching quilting to people. Portrait quilts were my specialty, and if you just Google Shruti, Dandekar, and quilts, you'll find a long list of places where I've been featured, including Pat Sloan's blog or Sandra Bruce's website. I was also a part of many international quilt magazines. They had featured me, and all of this came to a sudden end during the pandemic. And that is when I also started doing a lot of hand stitching. So at that time, in the beginning, it was just a pastime. I had this nice denim jacket that I've talked about before, and I wanted to add my own character to that, and that is how I got started with stitch meditation. I didn't realize that it was meditative till I think it was somewhere around mid 2021 that I realized that hand stitching was meditative for me. And not until April 2022 did I actually start doing something about it. So, in April, I started thinking that okay, I want to do this more for the benefits that it's giving me, not just for the pieces that I was making. Today, I'm going to talk about the mistakes that I made in the beginning as I started my practice. And in April 2022, when I started incorporating it as a practice to get the benefits from it. Until then, I was just enjoying the process and I had like no goals, nothing, and I was just enjoying. But then I started focusing it on it as a meditative practice, and that is when I made these mistakes in the beginning. And I want to share them with you so that you don't end up doing the same mistakes as I did. The first one was I did not set aside enough time for it. So, I used to squeeze in a session whenever I had time. I had just moved to this new city with my son, and I was overwhelmed with everything that comes with a new move, a new start in a new city. And so I had a lot of things to do, and meditation did not really take priority in all of it, but I kept on doing it like I wanted to do it, and I kept on doing it whenever I got time. There was no like structure to the plans that I made. And so some days I would do it twice a day, sometimes I won't do it for a week. But I later realized that because consistency was much more important, I did not see benefits for a long time. And once I started making space for it in my day every single day, I started seeing results over the period of next few months. In the beginning, it just started with feeling a bit different, like the good kind of different. I started noticing that I was feeling a little bit happier, a little bit calmer. I wasn't as stressed out as I used to be on the about the things that used to stress me out. And gradually, this calmness started, seeping into other areas of my life. I had started wearing my smartwatch frequently, and I realized that my average heart rate was going down. and I was sleeping better. I had more energy, and in general, I had a very content kind of feeling that I was content in the life that I was living, and I was really excited to do the work that came to me, and it was energizing to say the least. So these were the differences that I found in the next few months, and that helped me like continue doing this practice. It motivated me to do better and better further. My second mistake was that I was expecting too many results too soon. And this is very common, and it goes with the first mistake that I made of not making enough time in my schedule for it. So, what happened was that I thought I was doing this every day, and still I'm not sleeping better, still I'm not seeing results. But I wasn't doing it consistently to get those results. I wasn't focusing. I hadn't got hang of it. So I needed to give myself enough time for it. I was putting too many expectations on that practice, and I don't think it was helping me in any way at that time. Gradually, I did realize that I was expecting too much from myself and from the practice. And when I let go of those expectations, that is actually when I started seeing results, when I started focusing on the stitching, on the meditation part of it. That was when I started seeing results rather than when I was focusing on what am I getting out of it. So that was the second mistake that I made when it came to stitch meditations. My third mistake is something that we as quilters have done a lot of times. I was not mindful of my posture. I used to be slumped in a chair in my living room. Sometimes I used to sit in my bed and do it. And sometimes, like, I used to sit on my desk right here where I was working, and I used to just, squeeze in another session of stitch meditation. And that is when I realized that sitting in a single position, which was very awkward for a while. And that was actually giving me back pain, which I'd never had surprisingly when I was a quilter, because I was very mindful of the height of my table and everything. But here, when I was working with my hands, sometimes I used to keep it on my lap, bend over, and work. And that started giving me a little bit of pain in my neck and my upper back. So I started being more mindful of how I sit. So now I usually do not rest my back against the chair back, and I sit tall when I'm doing my stitch meditation. I also find that sitting on that huge exercise ball brings in a sense of balance, because to sit on it without moving around, you need to, like, pull your core in and really balance yourself. So I found that also to be very useful when I was stitching. But my favorite position still remains that chair in the corner that I shared on my social media last week. And it is the most comfortable position in the house. But I do take care that I don't rest my back against the sofa. Otherwise, I get like relaxed, and then I do not uh, pay a lot of attention to my posture. So that was the third biggest mistake that I made. The next big mistake that I made in my practice was I was not prepared for all the positive changes that doing this practice would bring in my life. Because not that I wasn't expecting them, I knew what was to come, but knowing something and being ready for something is being open to something are two different things. And for a long time, I realized I was resisting those positive changes. I was resisting that peace that I felt. I was resisting the calmness that I felt. I was actually resisting all the benefits that I was getting from my practice. And that was another big mistake that I made. But gradually, when I started being open to those changes, open to those influences that were coming into my life because of my practice, things started getting better at a very fast rate. The final and one of the most important, I feel, mistake that I made in my practice as a stitch meditator was I was not kind to myself. And because meditation is a practice, and like any practice, it's going to take a lot of time and effort to get better. And I wasn't kind to myself, you know. I was very hard on myself, and I used to be very angry with myself if I was not able to focus, if I missed a day of practice. Sometimes I used to stitch something and didn't like it and just undid everything and started all over again. So I was not kind to myself. I was expecting too much from myself and all of that thing. I didn't remember that progress is going to take time as well as effort and a lot of practice. But gradually, as I started building patience and persistence, and that is when I started seeing the results. And so, one thing, if you want to take away from this video, is just give yourself time to get better at things and don't beat yourself up over little things that ultimately will not even matter. So, yes, those were the five biggest mistakes that I was making when I started stitch meditating. So, if you have just started this practice, and if you feel that you are making any of these mistakes, just remember that be easy on yourself. Give yourself the benefit of doubt. You're doing something that is going to add so much to your life that a little mistake here and there is forgivable. So just be kind to yourself and just make it a practice more than anything else. Just focus on being consistent with it every single day or whatever pace that you have decided. So just make sure that you're consistent with it. The skill and the benefits will follow. So just focus on the consistency for now. Gather all your supplies and let's get stitching.